endless war. But I will finish it. Hello, my fellow YouTubers and subscribers, and welcome to my latest movie review, where today I review the third installment of the Planet of the Apes rebooted trilogy, War for the Planet of the Apes. War for the Planet of the Apes. Now, until recently, this was the most recent movie in the saga, and it concluded the trilogy, well, I suppose the Caesar trilogy, we can call it, which was the culmination of a lot of work from a lot of people to bring Planet of the Apes back to cinemas. This movie was released in 2017, and it was directed by Matt Reeves, who directed the previous movie, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. After the apes suffer unimaginable losses, Caesar wrestles with his darker instincts and begins his own mythic quest to avenge his kind. Now, I've made it very clear on this channel that I love the rebooted era of Planet of the Apes, and I really do mean that, and I really do believe that Planet of the Apes is one of those rare franchises where the reboot surpasses the original series. Not that the original film of Planet of the Apes is bad, of course not, but in terms of the overall series, the original series definitely does suffer after the first one. I'm stoked for words, guys, because War for the Planet of the Apes is my favourite of the franchise. This is, to me, the best Planet of the Apes movie we have so far. I loved Rise. I really liked Dawn. I adore War for the Planet of the Apes. This movie is so good. It is so good. I am absolutely blown away by how unspeakably perfect this film is. It is just stunning. This movie is an absolute masterpiece. And if Kingdom can top this, I will be even more stunned. I don't know how they did it. It's honestly incredible. It's a hat trick. We have 3 absolutely fantastic movies, and this is no exception. What I love about War for the Planet of the Apes, specifically the fact that this movie is darker, more intense, more grim, and deeply emotional. The emotion of this film is so strong, and I know a lot of people have criticized the movie's title for being misleading, because War for the Planet of the Apes makes you assume that it is going to be more of an action blockbuster, but that's not necessarily the case here. The marketing of this film, when it was coming out, definitely alluded to the fact that it was going to be a big budget action fisticuffs, which involved apes and humans clashing in the final battle, which we all expected. And we do get some of that here. We do get some action spectacle, but as Matt Reeves described it, it is an intimate spectacle. We get an intimate amount of action. And I think intimate is a word that I would use to describe a lot of moments in War for the Planet of the Apes. The movie almost kind of contradicts itself in that regard by calling itself War for the Planet of the Apes, and then having these beautiful moments with character drama at the forefront, which I think was a great decision. It really makes this film unique in a lot of areas. And I have to say, I mean, the whole trilogy is a fantastic character study for Caesar, and this is no exception. This is when Caesar goes dark. We've seen him wrestle with his loyalty to the humans and the apes in the previous movie, Dawn. Rise was him coming of age. This is him dealing with real loss and grief and how to overcome that. It's ironic because it feels like he is becoming more and more human as the story goes on. I suppose that is the great irony of this trilogy, is that it's Caesar's journey to humanity, and he was raised by a human, so of course this is very deep for him. There's that fantastic opening sequence in the woods where there's a humongous battle, and then he spares the colonel's men, and then the colonel sends his soldiers into Caesar's camp, and then the colonel ends up killing people that are close to Caesar. And this obviously causes Caesar to go on a revenge quest. There's that brilliant moment where Caesar and the colonel face off, and there's the dramatic music, and you really do feel like everything is different here. Each of the 3 Apes movies that we've got recently have been very, very different. And it really feels like a war movie in a lot of respects. And the cinematography is beautiful. This movie is just so beautiful. This is some of the best CGI ever put to film. It is honestly groundbreaking how good the apes look and how real it all feels, and the emotion that comes from the motion capture, it really is impressive, guys. And even to this day, this movie's 7 years old. It doesn't look like it's aged a day since it first released. The new movie looks about on par with this visually, so we'll see how that fares. But I really appreciate Andy Serkis here. I think Serkis really did deserve the Oscar for this role. I mean, Caesar is talking a lot more than he ever has done in this movie. He's more articulate, he's more evolved, he's definitely come a distance since the last film. And we really do see him having almost like a two-person conflict with the Colonel. Woody Harrelson is an interesting choice for the Colonel, because this Colonel is not necessarily a Colonel that you would think of as physically intimidating, but he is psychologically, well, disturbed, I suppose, is one thing, but he's psychologically very interesting to dissect, because there's that fantastic scene where he's telling Caesar about why he killed his family and why he did what he did for the greater good, so humanity could thrive over ape kind. And the fact that the Colonel was so willing to sacrifice his own son to win the war just goes to show how, in these desperate situations, we do the wrong things for the right reasons. And he felt like what he did was an act of war, and Caesar's taken it personally. The drama between these two is honestly fantastic, and the Colonel is absent for quite a lot of the film, actually. There's a good portion of the first two acts where he's not really in it. He turns up, and then he disappears, and then when we get to the prison camp, he's there again. But the film is quite a long journey, and Caesar and a couple of his friends go on this journey when they encounter a little girl called Nova. And I thought reintroducing Nova was fantastic. These movies are reboots, but if they were to connect to the 68 movie, you could imagine this Nova growing up to be the Linda Harrison Nova that we know from the original film. The actress, I believe, is called Amiah Miller, and she's terrific. She's really terrific, because this movie doesn't really have as much dialogue as the other films, despite the fact that Caesar talks a lot more. But Nova, her performance as Nova is incredible. She has that real childlike innocence, and she develops that lovely bond with Maurice, and she really does prove to Caesar that there is still hope for humanity in that brilliant scene where she goes and feeds and waters him and the other apes, and then his view on humanity can now change. It's just so brilliant. It's a brilliant character study, and the fact that they did this without minimal dialogue is so impressive. It's beautifully written and beautifully directed by Matt Reeves. You feel the stakes, you feel how epic this all is, and how humanity really lost its way because of what happened at the Genesis Lab in the first movie. But, there's hope for a better tomorrow, and Caesar, at his lowest low, then realizes there is a way forward. This girl has proved to him that there is a way forward, and I love that. Also, Michael Giacchino's music is outstanding. The music it's the best soundtrack of all the Apes films, and it's very, again, intimate and very beautiful. The central piano theme that plays quite a lot is the emotional core of the film, and it definitely elevates the film's emotional tone. And so much of the film is silent, and I think that's a very impressive thing to do, considering that this is called War for the Planet of the Apes. I love the attention to detail and the focus on intimacy in these moments. And when certain characters perish, you feel it. You really do feel the impact, whether it's emotion, tension, it all works very well. That being said, when we do get the action, it is spectacular. The finale is really spectacular when Caesar confronts the Colonel, and then the Colonel wants him to kill him, but Caesar has to decide whether he's the better man or not, and let go of his anger and his grief. And I think he'd rather the Colonel suffer primitively than suffer through death. And then Caesar tries to blow up the whole place before the other soldiers come in, because they're going to build a wall. yeah. You could choose to take that as a reference to Donald Trump if you like, but the apes are forced to work as slaves for the Colonel to build a wall to stop the other soldiers coming in, because the other soldiers disagreed with what the Colonel was doing. And, even some of the Colonel's soldiers who follow him, they fear him. They absolutely fear him. but he's doing what he's doing for the sake of the war. That's how he sees it. But I love that. I love that there's multi-dimensions. But I love that. I love that there's multiple dimensions to this character. And again, it's beautifully written. There is also a bit more comedy in this film than there is in Dawn, which is surprising because this is arguably more bleak than Dawn was. But War introduces a character called Bad Ape, who's played by Steve Zahn. The character does have emotional weight to him, and we realise that at the beginning when we meet him. But as time goes on, he is a comedy character. He's there to offer a small amount of light relief. And I think they used him just enough for it to feel relevant. They didn't overuse him, just enough. Any more and it might have felt like he was out of place. He was the thing that could have tipped the scale. Maybe made this film go one way or the other. Some would argue that the movie is a bit too long. I don't think so. I think it moves at a fairly consistent pace. And honestly, I was glued to my seat watching this the whole time. It's so immersive and it's so captivating. And again, it's beautifully shot, beautifully written. It's perfect. There are a couple of maybe like minor inconsistencies, such as, Nova breaking into the prison. But I don't really care too much about that because at the end of the day, the scene that followed was beautiful. And that little inconsistency I sort of forgave. And people criticise as well when they kill Nova's father in the village. But why she didn't react. It's like, well, she didn't actually see what happened. And she wasn't to know that Caesar and the Apes actually did that. So I don't really see that as a really big deal, but I get why people question it, but I don't think it's a huge deal. Also, the character of Donkey is really interesting. This ape gorilla who follows with the humans. He's been militarized and ridiculed, really, because they call him Donkey when he's actually an ape, and his loyalty definitely switches as the story goes on, and he starts to maybe think maybe there's a point to what Caesar is actually saying. Maybe the Colonel isn't the best person to follow in this instance. And the tension and the darkness and the brutality is honestly amazing. That like apes get whipped and tortured in this movie. There's even one scene when the Colonel shoots an orangutan right in front of Caesar because Caesar refuses to let the apes go back and work and build the wall. But there's that empowering moment when Caesar takes control and he says, "Leave him!" And oh my god, spine tingles every time I see that scene. It's so brilliant, honestly. And the locations are pretty stunning as well. Like, we're going more into the mountains and there's the beaches, and we spend a long time in the prison camp, but it's all for the sake of great drama. And again, the movie is just gorgeous to look at. It's truly a masterpiece, guys. And honestly, I'm super stoked if the next movie can top this. And the final resolution of the film, when they do eventually make it back to the promised land, as it were, and Caesar passes on, that's a really sad scene. But he's happy that he's done his duty and he's led his people to peace, and now he can rest. And I think it speaks volumes about a character that he managed to regain his empathy and his legacy after he lost his family, and he was falling into a dark path, which is a very human thing. His emotional response to losing his family was very human, which is, I think, very ironic in this case. But the final scene of the trilogy, it's absolutely beautiful when Maurice speaks and says, "Your son will know what you've done, and apes will know what you've done for us as well." It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And this story is so interesting because from the first to the second to the third, we really see a proper evolution of Caesar's life. We've known Caesar since he was born, and now we've known him when he dies as well. So, as an audience member, it's quite emotional following a character for that amount of time. So, at the end of the day, guys, War for the Planet of the Apes is absolutely incredible. This is one of my favourite movies. I really have grown to love this film so much. I love it every time I see it. It's not the film you can kind of just turn on and enjoy for fun, because it is very dark and it's very depressing and it can be very grim in places, but it is an epic film and it's beautiful in every sense of the word. I'm running out of words to describe because it's that good. So my final rating for this film is an easy 10 out of 10. I mean, it was a 10 out of 10 in the first 10 minutes. If I could rate it more, I would, but I have to have some kind of rating. And with this film, we have a perfect trilogy. Never have I been so blown away by a trilogy in recent years that has been on that consistent level of quality, where all three are a perfect 10 out of 10. I didn't think it could get much better than Dawn, but War just... wow. Wow. So, that ends my Planet of the Apes reviews. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my summary and assessment of these films. Next time, we look at the latest installment, which is due to be out next week at the time of recording this, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I believe is starting a new trilogy. So, we shall see how that transpires. So until next time, I will see you soon. Bye for now.